Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan and welcome to the latest episode of our entertainment show. As you know, we've been hyping up and we've been premiering for the last month the upcoming season 2 of our Stargate Syfy cult classics documentary. This is where we look back at the Stargate sort of franchise. We had a very successful season 1, 38 episodes in total. We spoke to numerous actors and actresses that appeared in the original Stargate movie, Stargate SGI, Stargate Atlantis, Stargate Origins, and Stargate Universe. And so we're on to season 2 now, we're delighted to say, and we've had numerous actors and actresses lined up to share their memories and the unique time that they spend on the set of Stargate, whether it be on the movie set or a TV series set as a guest actor. And I'm delighted this evening to be joined by the one and only Saul Rubinek, who played the role of Dr. Emmett, the journalist Emmett Bregman in the episodes Heroes Part 1 and Heroes Part 2. And he was briefly mentioned in the episode Covenant as well. And I suppose, Emmett, one thing that struck me watching back those episodes and doing my research on this sort of these episodes and about your character, it almost felt like the whole Roswell effect, that you were trying to discover a sort of secret base, a secret sort of entity that was going on, that was being kept up by the government, and you were prying your nose and sticking your head in as an investigative journalist would do, where it wasn't really welcomed by military officials. They didn't really take kindly to Emmett's sort of nosy, investigative sort of nature.
As a sleight of hand, for dramatic purposes, the writers knew, of course, that they were planning to make me an honorable fellow, but we didn't want the audience to think I was. We wanted the audience to think I was a son of a bitch and really anti-military and kind of left-wing liberal kind of type. Although he might be a left-wing liberal, but they wanted that to be a pejorative and a bad thing, and they wanted they wanted the military people to think that this journalist was going to write and film a documentary about them that was negative and military, about the evils of a military system, and so he was blocked out and given short shrift by people. And what your audience should know is that never intended to be in Heroes Part 1 and 2. It was a one episode and out thing. And when we were in the middle of shooting this, and one of the beautiful things that they did was it is revealed, partly because it happened to be the episode where a major character, I'm not a Dr. Bregman, by the way, I'm just a journalist. You misspoke, but there is a doctor in the cast who's killed. It's a major character who is killed in that episode, and it's a shock. It's a shock, of course, to the team, the characters in Stargate, but it's also a shock to the regular audience that a major character is killed off that way. And that gives dramatic opportunity for a journalist to then explore the effect of the death of such an extraordinary person who's there to save lives, and not somebody who's there to take lives, but and what the effect of that death has on her colleagues. And her fellow people in that unit. And that's when you begin to realize that Emmett is not there in order to do anything either negative or positive. He's trying to get at the truth of what's going on. And partly what's going on behind the scenes is whether or not there's going to be funding, government funding for the Stargate unit. And they're worried because they know the dangers and they know what they're protecting humanity from. They're worried that the politics of the time might stop the funding of Stargate. And they're very concerned that Bregman, is it Bergman or Bregman? I don't even remember whether it's Bergman or Bregman, but it's so long ago.
Bregman.
It's Bregman. Well, thank you. So they're very concerned that Bregman is going to be used, that his documentary is going to be used to help defund, to use a provocative term, to defund the military. But he's not there to do anything political. And even though he's hired by government to do this, to make this documentary, he is there just simply to get at the truth. And the truth is complicated, as all truth is. It's neither just positive or just negative. But what he does honor is he honors the bravery of these soldiers, and especially he's able to honor eulogize really the death of this very extraordinary woman, who's a very brave soul. The other part of it was that at a certain point, when they're trying to shut the cameras down, when her body is being brought back on board the ship, he has a speech about the importance of letting journalists speak the truth, because if they don't, God help them from who's going to speak the lies and what the results will be. Well, that's a very relevant thing, and probably the thing I'm most proud of in the episode. And also, it might have been cut because we were short. The episode was running long. And I remember speaking to the showrunners, who were extraordinarily generous, smart, collaborative people. Two men whose names are right out of my head because I forget my own name. If it wasn't handed to me constantly, I just forgot their names. No disrespect intended. They're wonderful people. And we talked about it, and they said, we're thinking. I said, well, what if the episode is long? Let me do the speech anyway. And they took my notes about how it should be said. They were very generous. It was their idea, but they let me add a few things of my own in a very generous spirit. And I said, look, it's not going to cost any time to shoot it. We're already set up. We're already on the location. Camera's going to be pointed in my direction. I just got to take an extra, minute and deliver the speech. And if you find that you're long, you do what you want. But there's really no reason to discuss shooting it. Let me just shoot it. Well, they loved it so much, and it made the episode longer. There were other things about the episode that they realized if they were going to put this speech in, then there were other things that happened in the episode to Emmett from the other characters that led up to it, that the speech wouldn't have the impact that it was meant to have if other things were shortened before it. And instead of truncating the whole thing and making, the cure worse than the disease, they said, let's just do a second episode. And let's add to the story instead of subtracting from the story. And that's why you have Heroes Part 1 and Heroes Part 2.
And Saul, on that note, in terms of Heroes Part 1 and Heroes Part 2, were you approached previously in terms of the earlier seasons for Season 1 and Season 2 to do a guest star role, or how did the opportunity come about or land in your lap to play a role in sort of Stargate? Were you advised by your talent agent, or were you reached out to in terms of the casting directors did reach out and said, listen, we need to get Saul on board, we have a particular character that we feel he could play?
Well, man, actors rarely know. Unless you're one of the few actors that actually can green light a series, or you're a big star and you're a big name star. Actors like me very often are third or fourth or fifth choice and never know who the first four were. There are other people not available. I might have been first choice, but I would never know. All that happens, the way the system works, and it happens this way in Ireland, England, France, everywhere, is that there's, once they're ready to cast a show, a breakdown is sent out of who they're looking for. And that's sent to agents and managers, who then make submissions. And sometimes people have to audition, and sometimes it's some actors are offer only for television series or episodics. Some actors will audition. Some actors won't audition, will take meetings. It depends on the actor. In this particular situation, I was offered the role. I read the script. I didn't know the Stargate series. I hadn't watched it, even though I'm a sci-fi fan. But because I was a dad of young children and busy as hell, and my time was occupied being a husband and a dad, but I did watch. I watched many episodes before I went on. Loved it. It was a terrific show. Great actors and beautifully written, most of it, and I was proud to be on it. And I went to Vancouver, where I have friends because I'm Canadian as well as American, and I grew up in Canada. Although in Toronto and Ottawa and Montreal, not in Vancouver, but I had friends, and I always hung out with wonderful friends in Vancouver. So I loved going to Vancouver. And I remember being there, I guess it was about 10, 12 days, 13 days or so. I don't remember when it was shot. You probably know when it was shot. I don't remember when it was shot. It was somewhere like, was it the early 2000s or the late 90s? Something like that, right?
Around 2001, if memory serves me correct.
Yeah. So my kids were young, and it was just terrific, And so, but how you get a role, unless you happen to know the showrunner or the people that are, they're friends of yours and you've worked, and they call you up and they say, I'd love you to do this, And then it goes through regular. Once you say, sure, I'd love to do it, they have to go through regular channels through casting and agents, managers, and it has to be negotiated. And then then you know. But most often actors in my position, just regular working actors who aren't movie stars or big television stars, we just are submitted by our agents and managers, and then they'll either say yes, we'd like that person to audition, or they'll say we'd like to make an offer, and that's when you get to read a script and make a decision about whether you'd like to audition or whether you'd like to accept an offer. And very often at that point, you talk to the people, you talk to the writers.
And Saul, an awful lot of characters are mentioned and actors, and most people who associate Stargate, they talk Richard Dean Anderson, they talk Amanda Tapping. But I would just want to bring up another character that's no longer with us. He played General Hammond, Don Davis, and a good lot of your interactions were with Don. And how did you find sort of feeding off Don in terms of that energy?
Oh, Don was an extraordinary man. He was. First of all, one of the great character actors. You've seen him in so many things before Stargate, and he comes up all the time when we're watching TV. It's Don. Look, and he's wonderful in everything he did. But more than that, he played a pretty gruff character, right? Really kind of hard-edged. Couldn't be further from the truth, Don. Well, maybe that side of him existed. I'm sure it did somewhere because he had to draw it from somewhere. But one of the most welcoming, sweet-natured, generous, open-hearted, huggable people. Really a delight, a delightful, collaborative, sweet man, and a wonderfully generous actor.
And Saul, in terms of the set of Stargate, you've been on many sets throughout your time in terms of Vancouver and Los Angeles, and most people say that they get blown away still by the sheer detail, the sheer eccentricities that they went through in terms of that Stargate set. When you saw the Stargate, when you saw the set for the first time,
I can tell you. Sorry to interrupt. I'll just get to it. I know what you're going to say, but you know what? I feel like an old man now. This is an anachronistic discussion. You know why? Because yes, it was a detailed set. Yes, it was an extraordinary set. And I've gone through, started working film in the 70s. And I've watched, digital grow, and I've watched film be replaced, and I've watched green screen and working with tennis balls in front of a green screen. And I recently did an episode of Percy Jones and the Olympians, which for Disney Plus, which is, it's basically like the Mandalorian sets. It's not green screen anymore. There are sets that are so detailed that they move in combination with the camera, and they take with them 100 visual effects people. And yes, they have to build the foreground and real, but the background is thousands of small screens that are all connected in 3 dimensions. So when you talk about, was it a realistic set? What's really extraordinary these days, honestly, I swear to you, really extraordinary, since you can blow up the White House with a laser beam today, right, in a single shot. What's extraordinary today is what was true many, many years ago, if not from the beginning. You put 2 great actors together with great dialogue and a good scene, and that's the miracle. In film, the miracle today, after everything that they can do on different planets and the green screen and the Mandalorian technique that they use, it's still 2 wonderful actors with great dialogue in a single shot. So what's extraordinary isn't the great set. Yes, it was a detailed set. Yes, it was. I remember the set. It was really beautifully art directed. It's a great, great set. But compared to what they're able to do today, technologically, here's what you remember. You know what was great about Stargate? Yes, great set. But what was great was the generosity of spirit of the regular cast welcoming an actor who is only there for a couple of weeks, the wonderful director, the great writers who ran it. And what I remember most are the actors, the regular cast that I worked with all, because I interviewed them all, right, as the journalist, and how generous they were, and knew that they were on a good show, and were humble the fact that they were lucky enough to be on a great show, and how wonderful they were as artists. That's what I remember, is that because you don't always know. You might enter a show, a series that's been long running, and enter a toxic atmosphere. That's happened to me. I'm not going to name where, but it's happened, where people are mean and they're unhappy and they're treated badly. but I was on a heavenly set. And that comes from the top down, probably from Richard Dean Anderson and the showrunners, and everybody was generous and kind and talented, and it raised the bar for me.
And Saul, in terms of Stargate, this respected sort of journalist, did you base that character on anyone that, in terms of mind, in terms of journalists that you admired or you've seen in the past that you wanted to base that character Emmett about? Had you any sort of take on where do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I mean, who can forget I grew up with Watergate and Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman and the journalists who outed the crimes that were committed by Nixon. So they're investigative journalists, right? But my character wasn't an investigative journalist. He was mistaken as an investigative journalist who was going to investigate, find corruption. He was mistaken, and that was on purpose by the writers. That he's going to, he's looking for dirt. He's looking for dirt, but he wasn't looking for dirt. He wasn't looking for cleanliness either. He was just looking for the truth. But what I remember most is at a certain point trying to be shut down by them. And they're trying to shut him down. And he's saying, be careful what you wish for. Because once you shut me down and people like me down, all you can hope for is lies. And those lies aren't always going to be in your favor. And what kind of world are we living in today where nothing has ever been more true?
That's so true. Saul, in terms of your time in Stargate, have you any sort of memory or unique story, maybe a blooper, maybe a funny moment, maybe a personal interaction with one of the cast members that makes you laugh or brings a smile to your face today, that's personal to you, that's unique to you, that when you think back about your time in Stargate, it brings a smile to your face and it's the first thing that you start to remember? So it doesn't have to be a scene as sort of such, but just a good story that still brings a smile to your face. Or have you ever came across an actor since? Do you remember that time?
I wish there was one incident, because first of all, when you're on a set like that, where people are having a good time and know that they're in a wonderful show and that they're happy to be there, what happens is there's always a lot of laughter. And there's always a lot of bloopers, and there's always people cracking up at the most serious moments. It happens constantly because people are right in the present moment, and they're able to be that way. You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. And this is the whole experience rather than one incident for you. I'm sorry I can't give you that. But I can tell you this, having been doing this now for over 5 decades, is that when an actor is put in a situation when they can make a complete utter ass of themselves, when they can make a fool of themselves, when they can make mistakes and not be judged harshly or shamed, they do their best work. Because you can't succeed without falling on your face. And you do it as an actor publicly. You don't do it in your room alone writing, or with a canvas in an attic, lit by, the morning sunlight. You're right in front of the crew with everybody else. Look at me, I'm starting to talk with an Irish accent now. Just picking it up off you. But there's, if you're in an atmosphere where you can make mistakes, then of course you laugh. And I was in an atmosphere where you can make mistakes. I was in an atmosphere that was collaborative. And it's not to say that they weren't under time pressure. There's never a show, no matter how many hundreds of millions of dollars they spend, they're always under time pressure. But they're always, but it depends on how the people who are running this thing treat the time pressure. And they can treat it creatively, or they might treat it toxically. In this case, it was wonderful. So I remember that set very fondly, because I'm sure I fell on my face a bunch of times, just like they did. And they gave me permission to do it. And I loved it, and people do their best work under those conditions. I'm sure that's true of you doing your show. If you're able to fall on your face and make mistakes, you're free, and you're not sitting there with stress, worried about whether you're going to be good or not. You're going to have a good time if you're allowed to make mistakes, right?
That's so true. That's so true. Saul, final question for you now, and probably the question I've asked every actor or actress I've interviewed over season 1 and season 2 over the Stargate documentary. Let's pretend there was a Stargate, an encyclopedia, a dictionary, a sort of such, and every fictional character that appeared in all the Stargate episodes or spin-offs were put in that dictionary encyclopedia. And under the name, they came to your character Emmett Bregman, and under his name, under his description, they left 2 blank sentences, a synopsis, a sort of such. And they got onto your talent agent, and they got onto your talent agent, got onto you, and they said, "Listen, we want Saul Rubinek to write those 2 sentences, summarize Emmett Bregman." If he was walking down the street past him, to say what type of a character, what type of a person he was. What would you like those 2 sentences to read?
Well, they thought he might turn out to be a villain. And then they thought he might have turned out to be a hero. But the truth is, he was just someone who wanted to tell the truth.
Wow, so good, so short, so creative, so well to the point. Saul Rubinek, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on the airwaves to relive your memories of your time in Stargate SG1, playing Emmett Bregman in Heroes Part 1 and Heroes Part 2 and 4 mentioned in the episode Confident. No doubt we mightn't have heard the last of you, Saul, in terms of the Stargate franchise, with a rumour TV series supposed to be in the upcoming works and a movie hopefully along on the way in the near distance. Maybe Emmett might make a reprisal in terms of his Stargate adventure in the near distant future. But for the moment, Saul Rubinek, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thanks for sharing your memories with you, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Stay safe, stay well, and please God will speak to you sometime soon again.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.